Welcome everyone to the second session of our Pearls of Practical Philosophy. And from the first session, we had an introduction to our inner personality, the mind and the intellect. When the philosophy has been distilled and is spoon-fed to us in such a simple diagram, if you recall, we had the body that performs action, and every action is directed either by your mind or your intellect. We look at this diagram and it seems so simplistic. Aristotle says, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. What he doesn't say, it is also the end of all wisdom. So when we start this journey of going within rather than outside, wisdom begins, because wisdom is from within. But the end of wisdom or the end of knowledge is Vedanta. Veda means knowledge, Anta means end. So literally the culmination, the end of knowledge, the end of wisdom is knowing your true self, the self within. It is called as self-realization, God realization, spiritual enlightenment, nirvana, known by different names, the same ultimate state of human perfection. So when we begin to understand that these are the equipments we have to function with, a body, a mind, and an intellect, how do we react with this information? There was one gentleman who visited the academy and extremely proactive. So he would take ideas and he would apply them immediately. And I recall him when he left, he started cycling. And then I asked him, from your experience at the academy, we don't even have cycling, but you have started cycling now that you've gone back home. He said, no, what I realized is I have a body. I have to take care of it. I have to develop it. What about the mind and the intellect? The mind is the seat of emotion. What effort in our day do we take to enhance, subtleize, purify our emotion? How do we move negative emotions towards positive, towards beautiful, divine emotions? And then our thinking. What does it mean to have an intellect? To think, to reason is the prerogative of a human being. No other species can do it. We can think apart from our desire, our nature, our instincts. We can question it. But how strong and how developed is our thinking? And just because we've lived 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it doesn't mean that we've mastered this technique of thinking. We've taken it for granted, like breathing. Thinking is a skill to be learned and developed. What efforts are we putting to do that? If we look at science, applied thinking, science puts up a hypothesis. And then from the hypothesis, from the question that it proposes, it does research. It experiments repeatedly. And from the data of the experiments, it formulates conclusions, laws, and these are the principles we live by. The same thing with thinking. The same thing with reasoning. How correctly or effectively are we able to connect cause and effect? We see it working around us throughout the universe. You plant an oak seed, you get an oak tree. You plant a coconut seed, you get a coconut tree. You study mathematics, you become a mathematician. You exercise and eat correctly, you're fit, healthy. There is cause and effect. Are our intellects able to connect it correctly? Yet we find there is such a demand for aspects that have perhaps some influence on our lives, such as there's a dependence on the stars. What is my horoscope saying about me today? Oh, it looks like I'm going to be finding love. Oh, it looks like these are tough times, tricky times. The newspaper is giving a commentary on your marriage, on what's going to happen at work. Why are we dependent on the stars? Or what is the position of my house? Is my house facing the sun? Is my bed facing the moon? Is it facing east, etc.? What gem am I wearing? This gem has a particular effect on my thinking. Now, perhaps there's a science behind it, but the influence that it has is so negligible compared to the influence of your thought. The intellect or thought has the ability to build empires, to demolish empires, to raise an individual, to degrade an individual, become a saint, become a sinner. This is the power of thought. And are we optimizing it? In this session, we're going to be talking about reasoning, but we're also going to be talking about the feeling aspect, which is the mind. We're going to be talking about faith. Because a human being is not a statue, it's not a plant. What does that mean? A plant doesn't have feelings, doesn't have intellection, can't reason. What about an animal? An animal has feelings. How many of you have pets? Oh, quite a few. So you know sometimes the pet is a more reliable companion than some of the family members. It gives affection. It rarely argues back. You find the pet is able to give emotion. But the difference with the animal is it has emotions, but it's victimized by the emotion. If a dog has an impulse for a mate, it cannot help but act on that impulse. But as human beings, we might find another person attractive. We cannot just act on the impulse. It has to be filtered. It has to be governed. A human being has feelings, has emotions. And this is important because often when people study Vedanta, they think it means emotion numbing, mind suppressing. It is not that. It is this beautiful confluence of mind and intellect. But the intellect needs to be able to govern and guide the emotions. This is important. And that's what we're going to be covering today. Who makes the decisions in the personality? See, every aspect of our personality has a particular role. So the job of the eye is to see. The job of the mind is to feel. What is the job of the intellect? Anyone?
To discriminate.
Discriminate. Mm-hmm.
What's important and what's not.
What's important and what's not. And what do we do with that discrimination, with that analysis?
Use it to act.
Use it to act.
Decision making.
Decision making. That's it. That's the word that we're looking for. The intellect's job is to decide. So the question to begin the session with, because it's the theme of the next poem that we're going to be studying, is when we make a decision, is it based on the mind's impulse, desire, feeling, or is it based on the intellect's analysis and reasoning? If the intellect is meant to be deciding and we're not using it for deciding, we don't enjoy the benefit of this wonderful equipment. Not just that, it can be detrimental, even fatal, if we don't use it. So let's get into the first poem today. It's entitled The Pond by Jane Taylor. And again, very simple, very innocuous poem. And when we go through it, I'll tell you the story. It's something that you can tell a 5-year-old. But when we get into the message, you'll see the depth. So the poem talks about a party of ducks that lived around this pond. There was a chick that lived nearby, and the chick would watch the ducks swimming. And it looked so enticing, so tempting. And she saw the ducks come in, dive, go out. She saw them swimming. And the thought came, the desire came, this looks like fun. I would like to swim. But her mother cautioned, whatever you do not go near the pond. So the chick is disheartened. But the chick says, okay, mom told me not to go near the pond. And the chick starts to reason. You would say it's using its intellect. And it reasons and it compares the different features of the duck, and it compares the different features that it has, and it sees no difference. And concludes, therefore, right? Besides, why shouldn't I be able to swim as well as the duck? I think I'll go into the pond and even try my own luck. And the chick goes into the pond, unable to swim, and dies. This is the story. Seems dark. The death of this chick. What is the message? And before we get into the analysis, would anyone like to have a go? What is the message from this story? It's using the intellect. We could draw the conclusion, intellect does not seem like a good idea. Look what happened to the chick.
She
The
ran after
temptation got the better. Sorry, can't. The temptation got the better of her.
The temptation got the better of the chick.
Yeah, the vasana to go into the water made her try it.
Okay. The vasana, the desire, right?
Desire is very strong.
Desire is very strong. Desire is very strong. Okay.
And the intellect is very weak. The reasoning was not proper. The word remarkably fond, the phrase.
So let's look for these clues. So we'll read the poem together. All right. So this poem is from a compilation called Select English Poems, compiled by Swamiji. So let's read the poem together. I'll put it up on the screen. And look for the clues to see where is the mind operating, where is the intellect coming in. The pond. There was a round pond, and a pretty pond too. About it white daisies and violets grew, and dark weeping willows that stood to the ground, dipped in their long branches and shaded it round. So it's just poetry for now. It's setting the scene, and it's creating the mood of tragedy. How? Shaded it round, dark weeping willows. The willow is already crying. A party of ducks to this pond would repair, to feast on the green water weeds that grew there. Indeed, the assembly would frequently meet to discuss their affairs in this pleasant retreat. Now, the subjects on which they were wont to converse, I'm sorry, I cannot include in verse, for though I've oft listened in hopes of discerning, I own 'tis a matter that baffles my learning. So the poet is saying, I looked at this party of ducks and they're quacking about. I have no idea what they're saying, just talking about and about. Now our story begins. One day, a young chicken that lived thereabout stood watching to see the ducks pass in and out. Now standing tail upward, now diving below, she thought of all things she should like to do so. So the poor silly chick was determined to try. She thought 'twas as easy to swim as to fly. Though her mother had told her she must not go near, she foolishly thought there was nothing to fear. My feet, wings and feathers for aught that I see, as good as the ducks are for swimming, said she. Though my beak is pointed, as their beaks are round, is that any reason that I should be drowned? So the poor silly chick, why should I not swim then as well as a duck? I think I shall venture and even try my luck. For, said she, spite of all that her mother had taught her, I'm really remarkably fond of the water. So in this poor ignorant animal flew, but soon found her dear mother's cautions were true. She splashed and she dashed and she turned herself round and heartily wished herself safe on the ground. But now 'twas too late to begin to repent. The harder she struggled, the deeper she went. And when every effort had been vainly been tried, she slowly sunk down to the bottom and died. The ducks, I perceived, began loudly to quack when they saw the poor fowl floating dead on its back. And by their grave gestures and looks 'twas apparent, they discoursed on the sin of not minding a parent. What is the chick using? Mind or intellect?
Mind.
Mind, for sure. And what are the clues that indicate the mind?
The desire to swim or to emulate the ducks, but not enough or adequate analysis. This is just driven by desire, and so justifying around the desire. So the beaks don't really matter. So go ahead.
No, I'm glad you used that word. The key word there is justify. So the duck in our story is using both the mind and the intellect. And I'll explain. Firstly, we can see very clearly that this duck, this chick, is motivated by desire. It uses the phrases, as Vidhi mentioned, I'm really remarkably fond. I'm not just fond. Where does fondness, where does desire come from? From the mind. I'm not just fond. I'm really remarkably fond of the water. So we know it's a strong desire. It's a strong fondness. Okay. Mind is very strong. Earlier in line 16, she says, she thought of all things she should like to do so. Like, again, where's it springing from? The mind. So what we can tell so far is that there is a very strong desire by the chick to swim. She knows her mother has told her not to go into the water, but the chick doesn't just act impulsively. It doesn't just go and swim. It actually pauses and analyzes. And this is where the intellect comes in. So it brings in the intellect and analyzes. Say, why did mother say that? And this is its analysis. My feet, wings, and feathers, for aught that I see, as good as the ducks are for swimming, said she. Though my beak is pointed as their beaks are on, so that's the only difference that the chick can see, the beaks. What does the beak have to do with swimming? and it comes to the conclusion, is that a reason I should be drowned? And the answer that we would say to that question is, no, that's not a reason. What is interesting about the chick's logic or so-called use of intellect?
The intensity of the desire is too high that it convinces the intellect that, okay, nothing's going to happen and just go ahead.
So yes, it convinces the intellect nothing's going to happen. And it's glossed over here. The poet does it so subtly. He says, my feet, if we look at a duck's feet, it's webbed for swimming, right? The chick's feet, as you know, are not webbed. But yet the chick looks at both the feet and sees it as the same. And this is where the philosophy is. When we are held under the powerful influence of desire, of our mind, we lose our objectivity, we lose our ability to analyze and reason correctly. So we reason in a circle. Now, what does that mean? It means we've already decided the outcome. We've already reached the conclusion. And then we find different corroboratory reasons to get back to the same point. To say, look, it's okay, go ahead. We justify. Justification. We don't reason, and this is correct reasoning. Correct reasoning is where you go step by step, like in mathematics. You go to the next step, and because of this, you get to this, and because of this, you conclude, and therefore, ... conclusion. But how do we know? How do we know when we're reasoning correctly or when we're justifying? How do we know when we're reasoning in a circle or we're reasoning linear? The chick would say, look, Sudhakar, I attended your session last week and I've started using my intellect. And this is what happened. It's talking to us from the afterlife. What would you say? How do you know the difference?
I mean, the chick had the information, and one additional information that it didn't use, and that's the advice of the mother.
It did have the advice of the mother. It could have asked the mother. Look, it's a very simplistic story. Now we've got to bring the principles of it into our own lives. Where do we justify? You set an alarm to wake up early in the morning, maybe do some study, some reading, some introspection, maybe go to gym to have a workout. And what happens early in the morning? Mind starts justifying, look, you didn't sleep properly. You know, sleep is an integral part of health. Nobody asked you to wake up early. You decided, but the mind justifies. It's winter in the Northern Hemisphere. Oh, lovely weather to sleep in. The mind justifies. There are tools at our disposal to check our thinking. But the problem is, when we're so caught up in the desire, we don't see correctly. We see the feet as the same. The French phrase, la vie en rose. We see life through pink-colored lenses. If you're in love, everything is pink, it's got a hue, everything is happy, and suddenly you notice the flowers and you notice fragrances and the food tastes better. And when the desire changes, or when the desire is obstructed, you see everything negatively. So we have this lens of the mind in the world we interact with. So we don't see clearly. And because we don't see it clearly, we're not as effective or we're not as objective as we can be. Our choices are compromised. One way to check, and only if a little bit of our intellect is available can we even check, are we being held hostage by our mind's desire? Is our mind going up to the intellect and say, hey, intellect, I've already decided that this is the conclusion you should reach. Find some reasons to get there. So the justification check is, did the conclusion come first or the reasoning? If you're reasoning correctly, you weigh up the pros and cons and then the conclusion. If you're justifying, you have the conclusion already, and then you reason in a circle. This is one check. Oh, mom, dad, I am in love with this wonderful, wonderful girl. And they say, but look at the qualities of this girl. And they try and tell you, look, these are our characteristics, and these are our oh, mom, dad, you must see with my eyes. We may only see the positives. So what do? How do we stop being a victim of the influence of desire? How do we remove that lens to see clearly and make right decisions and not end up like what happened with the chick? In chapter 2, verse 62 and 63 of the Bhagavad Gita, we call these two verses the ladder of fall. And it shows how trouble starts. And it all starts with one thought. And if you allow that one thought, if you don't catch it with the intellect in the beginning, if you just say, oh, I like the water. If you don't catch it in the beginning, water is not for me. If you allow that thought to build momentum, you say, it looks like fun. I really like it. Oh, I want to try it. Look what that duck is doing. The thought becomes an attachment. That attachment becomes desire. And when that desire is there, it becomes greed. If the desire is obstructed, it becomes anger. And if you continue down this track of building this desire without any intellect intervention, you become deluded. And we see this for people who go so strong where they become addicts, or they break ethical and moral constructs to fulfill their desires. And the last part they say is, when you lose yourself completely, there is no intellect, there is no memory, there's no identity. It means you've gone insane. It all starts with one thought. And do you allow that thought to build? The best thing is to catch it at the beginning and say, hold on, thought, are you helpful or not? If it's not helpful, oh, I shouldn't swim. You park that thought. You don't allow it to build momentum, become a desire that could compromise your thinking. So there are 4 stages of intellectual strength. And it's interesting because it actually applies in different facets of life. So you can have a generally strong intellect, but in areas of different desires, you will find your intellect a little stronger, a little weaker. And I'll put it up on the screen for you. The first is, there's no intellect. We just operate on the mind. This is the life of a child. There's no intellect. So it's just, I like this, I don't like this. I want this, I don't want this. No intellect. Today we have been discussing chick's intellect. Do you have a chicken intellect? Very low intellect. Means you have some intellect, but it is used by the mind to justify to yourself, to alleviate any guilt, it's a rubber stamp. It has no meaning. It is a victim of the mind. Now, if your intellect is a little bit stronger, if you started developing your intellect, you can manage the mind. And you're able to control the mind. But that does not mean that your reasoning is 100% correct. You might reason, but you might miss something in your data. Why? Because your intellect is not perfect yet. So just because you use your intellect doesn't mean your decisions will be 100%, but it is far more probable that it'll be correct rather than the mind, which is speculative, has no direction. It's a gamble. And as you continue using the intellect, it'll get stronger. You'll be able to manage the mind, reason correctly, make great decisions. No regrets, a life of no regrets. The principle we get from this session is we need to develop this intellect. And we should be suspicious when we are under the influence of a strong desire, a strong emotion. The problem is, and this is the catch-22, is we need some intellect to be aware that we are under that influence of strong desire or emotion. Otherwise, there is no redemption. When we are aware that, yes, I do have a strong desire for this, my thinking may be flawed, then we can look for counsel. Or if we understand my intellect is not strong, I should take counsel and take the advice of a higher intellect. In this case, it is the mother, scripture. Question the mother. The mother has given a direction, but it hasn't been understood. Question the mother. So when we find that we may be compromised, this is the area to take advice, counsel, and this is the role of a guru in life. So I'm not saying you have to do it for every decision, whether I should have one more slice of toast or not. Look, you can take a chance on that one. Go with the intellect you have. But when it's bigger decisions, maybe to emigrate or to take on a particular business partner or life partner, or to part with the family or to work with the family, these may be areas where you could check your thinking to see if you are objective or are you tinted by your desire. There's a quote by James Allen. He says, if you're tranquil, if you're calm, you have greater potential for success. The more tranquil a man becomes, the greater is his success, his influence, his power for good. Calmness of mind is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. When do you perform the best? When your mind is calm. You can think clearly. But the world today thinks you have to be stressed to perform. No. Stress is an external factor that gets us to act. But it doesn't mean that we think best under stress. If we look at a diagram here, if we show the mind as a pool of thoughts, when the mind is calm, whatever activity you do, you're able to do it 100%. Okay? So you can see this. So whatever effort you put in, if your mind is calm, you get 100% output because there's concentration. If you're calm now, if you have nowhere else to be, if you're 100% here in the lecture, enjoying it, you take in maximum for this exercise. But in the next slide, if the same effort, if your mind is disturbed, so see the pool of thoughts, you can see it's disturbed. If your mind is disturbed, maybe you're thinking about a relative that has just contracted COVID, you're concerned about them. You're thinking about a deadline, some work assignment that is due tomorrow. If your mind is agitated, your ability to absorb from this class is compromised. And this is what James Allen puts so eloquently. But this is the mechanism of it. Strive to think and make decisions with a calm mind. If you're agitated, suspect my thinking could be compromised. Therefore, let us develop the intellect. Develop the intellect. How do we develop the intellect? It's like a muscle. It needs to be used. It needs to be activated. So we need some kind of intellectual gym. And what I would recommend is use the early hours of the morning, which is by nature calm, tranquil. Use that first hour in the day to develop your intellect. How? Start with literature on the intellect, but go about it in a structured way, methodic. Then you will find the benefits of your study. So dedicate an hour to your inner reflection and development. One recommendation, which I myself am doing, is the Vedanta e-learning course, where we go through a 3-year syllabus. So we go through 10 books. In fact, this text that we're studying, these poems, is the 4th book. But you go through a systematic study where you're spending time with these ideas. You're learning about the mind, you're learning about the intellect, and you will find, I would say, if you're consistent, you would see the difference in 3 months. You will find that the way you handle a situation or a person, there's a complexion change. And what is that? That is nothing but the emergence of your intellect in a situation. Do we have any questions? All clear? Claudio looks like he's not going to be a chick. Paresh, do you have a question?
Yes, please.
Sure, go ahead.
The situation, Sudhakar, where you mentioned that the discriminatory thinking and decision making can be erroneous and flawed. And frequently that is due to the mind, in a sense, contaminating that clarity of discriminatory thought and decision making. What about this situation where the mind is not interfering? You are doing your best in thinking as clearly as you possibly can and making choices and decisions, and it is still erroneous. What is the reason behind that sort of situation? You know within yourself that I'm not letting emotions get in the way here. I am thinking as clearly as I possibly can, but yet that discrimination, that viveka, is off on the wrong path.
So this would be stage 3 of that intellectual strength, where you're able to manage the mind is not interfering, but the intellect's capacity is not able to effectively know whether it's missing a vital aspect of data that is required for the analysis or has missed a step. So like, how do you grade different students in mathematics? So the thorough students go step by step. One student might miss one step, and that's where the flaw is. So in these key decisions, and as we get to assess ourselves better, we'll be able to find out where we need to consult, where we are fine to go ahead with our intellect's decision. But bottom line is, whatever it is, in any given scenario, the intellect, going with your intellect, is always more effective than your mind. Why? Because the mind just goes on impulse, the intellect on some reasoning, some substantiation. You okay with that, Paresh?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll get on to the next poem. Now we bring in the faith aspect. And this poem is called The Olive Tree. And it's one of the most philosophical poems in this book. It's by Sabine Baring-Gould, and it talks about the futility of prayer and what is true prayer. So the story begins with two hermits, and they would pray at night. So for their night prayers, they needed light. And for light, they needed oil. And for oil, they needed olives to make olive oil. And for olives, they decided to plant an olive tree. Now, all this to do what? Why do they need light? Why do they need oil? Why do they need olives? Why do they need an olive tree?
For prayers.
For prayers. To pray, you need all of this. So the problem started there. Just to pray, you get involved in all these aspects. The fellow becomes an olive tree merchant, selling olives. He started off with the idea to pray. Look where he ended up. The story goes, the two hermits decided we needed olives. And how do we get olives? From an olive tree. So they both planted the olive seed. The first olive, who we'll read about, he planted the seed. And then he placed his hands above it, and his hands are trembling. Let this tree grow beautifully. And he asked God, send it rain, send it showers. Then he asked God, send it sunlight. Then he said, send it frost. He gives a list of demands to God. He prays, what? For the seed to grow beautifully into an olive tree so that he can pray. At the end of the story, his olive tree dies. He goes to his brother, the other hermit. And this hermit is sitting in a rocky cell. And outside the rocky cell, there's a flourishing olive tree. I said, brother, how is it? I have asked God for this and for that. He had granted all my wishes, yet my olive tree died. And look at yours. How is it that your olive tree is thriving? To which he answers. And remember, in the poem, the lines that are in italics are the key lines. The other hermit says, he who made knew what it needed better than a man like me. He also wanted his olive tree to grow. He planted it, he left it. The olive tree grew beautifully. Now, this is the story. Now, let us philosophize. So, we'll go through the poem together, and then we'll derive the message from it. The olive tree. Said an ancient hermit bending, half in prayer upon his knee. Oil I need for midnight watching, I desire an olive tree. Then he took a tender sapling, planted it before his cave, spread his trembling hands above it, as his benison he gave. Note, why are his hands trembling? I'm just putting some clues out there. But he thought, the rain it needed, that the root may drink and swell. God, I pray thee, send thy showers. So a gentle shower fell. Lord, I ask for beams of summer, cherishing this little child. Then the dripping clouds divided, and the sun looked down and smiled. Send it frost to brace its tissues. Oh my God, the hermit cried. Then the plant was bright and hoary, but at evensong it died. Went the hermit to a brother, sitting in his rocky cell. Thou an olive tree possesseth, how is this, my brother, tell? I have planted one and prayed, now for sunshine, now for rain. God had granted each petition, yet my olive tree had slain. Said the other, I entrusted to its God, my little tree. He who made knew what it needed better than a man like me. Laid eye on him, no conditions, fixed no ways and means. So I wonder not my olive thriveth, whilst thy olive tree did die. Sabine Baring Gold. Masterpiece. These poems have enough content and substance to live our lives on. What is he saying? 99% of people who pray go to a temple, church, mosque, a place of worship, and they have a list of things to be accomplished. They have demands. God, this wish giver, please grant me this, grant me that, grant me this, grant me that. And there is bargaining going on. If you get a good match for my daughter, I will donate so much to the temple. All this is going on in the name of prayer. Prayer today has become not P-R-A-Y, it has become P-R-E-Y. It's become praying. We pray on God, asking and asking and asking. This is not prayer, and it's futile. And this is what the poem tackles. Why is it futile to ask? First, if we look at the cosmos, everything functions on cause and effect. You put in an effort, you get its corresponding effect. So when we ask, what does asking do? Is there somebody there just because you ask will give you? What will give you? Your action, your right cause will give you the right effect. Remember this. Swami Parthasarathy, he says, you get what you deserve, not what you desire. Just because you ask, just because you want, doesn't mean it's going to happen. The want has to translate into action. The action has to translate into deserving, and then you receive. So you don't go about asking and begging and saying, please, from a demander. With your right effort, your right spirit, you become a commander. You deserve it. So there's no point asking, because desire doesn't do anything. You've got to deserve. This is the first principle. This is why it's futile. If you don't deserve it, why will you get promoted? You may ask your manager, your CEO for a promotion. Why will you get the promotion? But if you have deserved it, you may not need to ask. The second aspect is, why shouldn't we ask? I want this in life, and I want that in life, and please give me this, please give me that. If only I could have this, if only I could have that. And this is similar to the theme from the turkey and the ant that we studied last week. Because genuinely, if I was to go around the class and say, Vijay, what do you want? Azim, what do you want? Vish, Siddhant, what do you want? Leila, what do you want in life? You might be very articulate. Sudhakar, I know exactly what I want. A beautiful chalet overlooking Lake Geneva. A patisserie just up the road. You can give a list of things. But Howard will tell you, that's not what you want. He's in Geneva, near Geneva. Leila also. They will tell you it's not there. You do not know what to ask for. Because only when you get it, you realize that that's not actually what I want. I want something else. We're never fulfilled. The mind wants more. There's a story of a bachelor boy who he had everything. He was a golden boy. He had looks, he had charisma, he had intelligence, he was an athlete. What a package. All the elements rolled up into this one bachelor. The only thing that was missing in his life was a golden girl. Now, where'd you find this golden girl? It would just complete life. He's like, everything is perfect. Tick, tick, tick. Only the girl is missing. So his mother told him, look, I wouldn't take any chances. You saw what happened with the pond. Go and ask somebody higher. Go and ask God. So he says, Mom, go and ask God? She says, sure, yeah, go and ask God. Look, you go to Kashmir, and from Kashmir, you take this route and you take a few steps up and then you're there. She seemed to be very clear on the path to heaven. He makes the trip and he gets an audience with God, and God asks him, hey, you're early. What are you doing here? I said, no, God, I've come to ask you. You've granted me so much. Could you assist with the wife? And God said, wife? Sure, no problem. Any particular preference? Do you want North Indian, South Indian? He's asking. He said, God, I leave it up to you. And surely, when he made the trip back, the parents had a girl waiting, ready to introduce. And they get married. And after marriage, 1 year passes, 2 year passes, 3 year passes. Very pleasant. It was a pleasant relationship. They're happy. Everything was perfect, except they're unable to conceive. Now what? And the wife said, very simple, just how you got me, go and ask God for a child. I said, no, I can't do that. The last time I went and I asked God, I can't keep on going and asking God. He says, God knows our limitations. Go and check. He makes the trip to heaven. He asks God. God says, not a problem. We have so many in store here. Boy or girl? Girl. Grants a girl. But before he leaves, God asks him, look, my son, is there anything else that you want? I feel bad that you're making these trips back and forth. And this time he sat down and he thought about it. Is there anything else I need in life? No, I'm fine. He makes the trip back and his wife gives the news that she's expecting. And surely they're blessed with a beautiful, healthy girl. But after some time, a couple of months, they realize the girl is both deaf and dumb. Now what? So she can't hear what we're saying. We can't hear what she's saying. Do you go back to God? This time, the boy realized, the bachelor boy, I'm not going back to God. Why? Because I realized I do not know what to ask. Because if I was to go to God and say, God, give my daughter a voice, give my daughter speech, hearing, my daughter might grow up and the only thing she does is curses me. Then I go back to God and say, God, please give us sense not to curse me. Then God gives that. And then in the pink of health, she may have an accident. Then go back to God and say, God, no. She must not have an accident. She must pass away after me. It goes on ad infinitum. We don't know what to ask for. There is a divinity that is shaping our ends. Let it shape. Leave it alone. And this is where the faith comes in. There is a cosmos, not a chaos. There is a divinity. Can you see it? And this is the faith. And it's faith in what? You could take a devotional approach and say, oh, it's faith in God. It's faith in the Creator. Or you could take an intellectual approach in the law of karma. There is cause and effect, and whatever I get is what I deserve. And I leave it to that accountant, that force who's putting all the orders of life together to dish out whatever I need to receive. Therefore, I won't ask. It doesn't mean I won't work for what I want, but whatever comes, comes. It's not a blind faith. It's seeing the meticulous functioning in nature, how it works. As science improves and as human beings, we become humbler and we start seeing how things work around us. We see the orbit of the electrons around the nucleus is the same as the orbit of the planets around the sun. Incredible. We see how the earth is so integrated to support the different aspects of life. How the forests have a biodiversity that helps us, how the oceans play a part in creating oxygen for us, absorbing the poisonous gases. So much of interconnection. We're finding out how trees have a network of communication. Incredible. So much we're oblivious of. Why interfere in this plan? And this is what the first hermit did. He interfered. He projected his desires on God. I want this, God, and I want that because I know better than you. The other hermit just did what he had to do. He planted the seed and he left it. And we see this involvement of the first hermit in the poem. We say, why? He says, remember we said trembling hands? Why trembling? Anyone?
Because he doesn't know.
Sorry?
He doesn't know what is needed.
He doesn't know what is needed? Yeah. If he didn't know what is needed, he wouldn't have asked for all these aspects.
It is the desire, and because of the desire, he's scared that if it doesn't happen, then what will happen?
That's it. It's the desire, it's the craving, it's the anxiety that is giving him that tension. He's trembling. The other guy, he just left it. And where did he leave it? In the rocky cell. And it grew in the rocky cell. And that is the message there. Why? Let us do our part. We're not saying relax our effort, but let us not demand what should happen. Why? Because we're not in control. You may plan, and there's nothing wrong with planning, but understand you're not in control of the future. You're in control of the present. You put in your best effort, it will have an effect. When it has an effect, what your past efforts have been, how it will all coincide into the result, you don't know. So what? Submit, surrender to that providence, to that divinity. Let it work. Who would have seen COVID coming? With all the business plans and projections, who saw COVID coming? With all our great life plans that we have, an accident. I lost my hearing in my right ear. Just woke up one morning, gone. I still don't know what the cause was. How it happened. So you could take a devotional approach and you say, it's all by the grace of God. So whatever happens, God is giving his blessing. In Sanskrit, they use the word prasad, God's gift. Intellectually, you understand there is cause and effect functioning. As a human being with the limitation of intellect and information that I have, I don't know the greater scheme of things, therefore, I surrender. I have faith in whatever happens is meant to happen, I submit. Not that I am fatalistic, that I do not put in effort. The effort is there 100%, but you just let it work. And we're going to be covering some poems later on, which talks about this objective approach. I want to finish with this quote from Tennyson. He says, more things are wrought by heaven than this world can dream of. And what this means is, if you act in a spirit of true prayer, which means let me do my best and leave the rest to providence. This is prayer. You will be taken care of by nature, by providence. But if you assert with your ego and try and take control, you lose that benevolence. See, it's an attitude. The attitude is you demand and you don't always get what you want because you're not in control. So you're constantly disappointed. The other is you accept whatever you receive, you make the most of it, all by the grace of God. A few people I've seen this. In history, we see with Samuel Johnson. He says, if less be possible with less. No educationist supported his work to write the first English dictionary. He says, if no one's going to support me, I'll continue my effort. And he produced it. And he philosophizes, providence enabled me. And the other person is our own Swamiji. The man just wanted to study. He never had a desire, never conceived that we would be lecturing in different parts of the world, at the Dubai Opera, the New York City Town Hall, in Cadogan Hall, in the Linda Auditorium in South Africa. Never conceived, never desired it. Now we have the complete works being released. Never thought of all that. If you see the campus today, beautiful, 35 acres, manicured landscape, the buildings are looking fantastic. What a resource that has been created to study this. And all he did was planted the seed, left it. He who made knew what he needed better than a man like me. If you follow this approach in life, you will be blessed. This is true prayer. This is true faith. Think about it. It's very subtle. Next week, we cover more on the emotion side, love and devotion. Have a good week, everyone.